as fate, power to earn. He's a singer, storyteller, lion, wanderer, talons, clencher, a burst open, she writes poetry, he lights fire, skin turns paler, she writes poetry, la la la. She writes poetry, la la la. She writes poetry. She writes through shock therapy. Daddy, daddy, don't make me weak. Currents are positive, waves swells are negative. Give me something to sleep. She writes poetry. She writes poetry. He's a singer, storyteller, lion, wanderer, talons, clencher, a burst open. She writes poetry. He lights fire, skin turns paler. She writes poetry, la la. She writes poetry, la la. She writes poetry, la la. She writes poetry. She writes stanzas and villanelles, love me to death, heartfelt confessionals, masochists, Nazis and narcissists, Colossus scenario. She writes poetry. She writes poetry. He's a singer, storyteller, lion, wanderer, talons, clencher, a burst open. She writes poetry. Lights fire, skin turns paler. She writes poetry, la la. 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 She writes poetry. For the